The smoke detector in the barn screamed first. Isaiah Tucker woke to a sound he'd never forget. High-pitched, urgent cutting through the summer night like a knife. His bedroom ceiling glowed orange. Not the soft light of dawn, but the angry, flickering pulse of fire reflecting off white paint that had covered those boards for 30 years. 3:17 a.m. He'd remember that number forever, burned into his consciousness the same way the flames were burning through his grandfather's barn. He stumbled out of bed, feet hitting the cold hardwood floor, his 58-year-old joints protesting the sudden movement. Through the window, he could see it clearly now. The barn fully engulfed flames, reaching 30 feet into the night sky, casting long shadows across the farm that had been in his family since 1947. Isaiah grabbed his phone and dialed 911, his hands shaking so badly he nearly dropped it twice. Fire at 1847, County Road 14, Tucker Farm. The barn's on fire. Fully involved. "I need the fire department now." The dispatcher's voice was maddeningly calm. "Sir, we're dispatching units now. Are there any people or animals in immediate danger?" "My horses." Isaiah choked out, already pulling on jeans and boots. "My horses are in the paddock near the barn." He ran outside in his t-shirt and work boots, no jacket, despite the September chill, and the heat hit him like a physical wall. The smell came next. Burning hay, scorching wood, melting rubber from the tractor tires stored inside. Under all of that, something chemical. Sharp. Wrong. The kind of smell that didn't come from old wiring or a careless cigarette. Accelerant. Someone had done this on purpose. His two horses, Redemption and Grace, were screaming in the paddock 50 yards from the barn. They could feel the heat, see the flames, and their panic was primal. Isaiah's hands were shaking so badly he could barely work the gate latch, but he got it open and the horses bolted past him toward the back field. Hooves thundering on hard-packed earth. The barn his grandfather had raised in 1947 with post-war timber and determination was collapsing into itself. Isaiah could see the main support beam sagging the roof, caving inward, 90 years of family history, turning to ash and ember. He heard the sirens then. Finally. The volunteer fire department, his colleagues, men he'd served alongside for 20 years. Men who knew this barn as well as he did were coming. But they were coming slowly. No rush, no urgency, almost like they'd been told to take their time. The first truck rolled up his driveway at 3:34 a.m., 17 minutes after his call. For a fully involved structure fire, that was a lifetime. By the time they had water on it, the barn was already lost. They knew it. Isaiah knew it. They went through the motions anyway, spraying water on a corpse. And standing in Isaiah's driveway, arms crossed, backlit by flames like some kind of demon from a nightmare, was Sheriff Wade Cutler. Not in uniform, just jeans and a t-shirt like he'd rolled out of bed and driven over, which meant he'd heard about the fire fast. Maybe too fast. He wasn't helping. Wasn't asking if anyone was hurt. Wasn't directing his deputies to secure the scene or check for evidence. Just watching. And smiling. That smile cut through Isaiah's shock like a blade. It was a small thing, barely there, just a slight upturn at the corners of Cutler's mouth. But Isaiah saw it, and he understood. This wasn't an accident. This was a message. The fire burned until sunrise. By 6 in the morning, all that remained were blackened support posts, standing like grave markers, and $40,000 worth of equipment reduced to twisted metal sculptures. The smell lingered. Chemical and organic destruction and intent. The fire marshal arrived at 9. Tommy Jenkins, local boy, 30 years old, appointed to the position by the mayor. He spent 12 minutes walking around the perimeter, taking a few photos with his phone, not really looking at anything. "Looks like electrical," he said. making notes on a clipboard, still not making eye contact with Isaiah. Old wiring. These old barns, you know. These things happen. Isaiah pointed to the obvious pore pattern on the ground. The accelerant smell still hanging in the air 6 hours later. The fact that the barn's electrical system had been completely rewired just 2 years ago, brought up to code, inspected, and certified. "You want to investigate that?" Isaiah asked, his voice carefully neutral. The fire marshal glanced at Sheriff Cutler, who was still there, still watching from his patrol car parked at the end of the driveway. "Nothing to investigate, Mr. Tucker. Accidents happen. You're lucky no one was hurt." He closed his clipboard. "I'll file my report with the county. Insurance should cover most of it once they process the claim." He left. Isaiah stood in the ashes of his grandfather's barn, surrounded by the smell of arson that everyone was pretending was an accident, and realized something fundamental about his situation. They weren't just trying to scare him. They were trying to erase him. One building at a time, one piece of his history at a time, until there was nothing left to fight for, and no one left to remember that Isaiah Tucker and his family had ever been here at all. He thought about the night 6 weeks ago that had started all of this. The night everything changed. The night he'd made the mistake of being in the wrong place at the wrong time and seeing something he wasn't supposed to see. County Road 47, August 23rd, 11:47 p.m. Isaiah had been driving home from the church council meeting, tired and ready for bed, his mind on the next day's work and the weather forecast that promised rain. County Road 47 was the back way home, 10 minutes shorter than going through town, and at that hour there was never any traffic. He'd been humming along to the gospel station on the radio when his headlights swept across the old Bradley textile mill as he made the turn onto the main road. The mill had been abandoned since 2008, nothing out there but rust-broken windows and memories of when Coopersville had actually made things, instead of just slowly dying. But that night, there was a vehicle parked in the gravel lot. A sheriff's department patrol car, lights off, just sitting there. And standing in the spillover from the car's headlights were 2 men. Sheriff Wade Cutler, unmistakable even at a distance. Stocky build, that characteristic way he stood with his chest puffed out like he owned the world. And Marcus Washington. Everyone in Coopersville knew Marcus. Known dealer had been since high school. Somehow never got caught with enough to actually go to prison. Always just small time enough to avoid serious charges. Always just connected enough to keep operating. Isaiah's headlights swept across the scene for maybe 3 seconds as he completed his turn. Long enough to see Marcus hand over a duffel bag. Long enough to see Cutler open his trunk. Long enough to see packages being transferred from the bag to the trunk. Long enough to see money change hands. Long enough for Sheriff Wade Cutler to turn his head and make direct eye contact with Isaiah Tucker through the windshield of Isaiah's 2015 Ford F-150. 3 seconds. That's all it took to change everything. Isaiah didn't stop, didn't slow down, just kept driving, his heart hammering against his ribs, his hands suddenly slick with sweat on the steering wheel. In his rearview mirror, he saw Cutler still standing there, hand moving to rest on his service weapon, watching Isaiah's taillights disappear into the darkness. Isaiah drove home, parked in his driveway, sat in his truck for 20 minutes, trying to decide what to do. He could pretend he hadn't seen anything, could mind his business, keep his head down, survive the way he'd survived 60 years in a small southern town where being black meant always calculating the cost of every action, every word, every breath. Or he could do what his wife Clara would have told him to do. He could tell the truth. Clara had been gone for 3 years now, taken by diabetes complications that might have been manageable if they'd had better insurance, if the nearest specialist wasn't 90 miles away, if small-town medicine had kept up with the times. But she'd held on as long as she could, And in those final months when the pain was bad and the medication made her loopy, she'd still been the strongest person Isaiah had ever known. "Baby," she'd said to him one night, holding his hand with fingers that were too thin, too cold. "Promise me something. Anything. Don't let them make you small. Don't let this town, this life, this fear make you forget who you are. You're a good man. Good men speak up when they see wrong. That's what your daddy taught you. That's what you're gonna teach our grandkids. Clara, promise me, a man who sees wrong and says nothing becomes part of that wrong." He'd promised. And now, 3 years later, sitting in his truck at midnight, he could hear her voice as clearly as if she were sitting in the passenger seat. "Tell the truth, baby. Do the right thing." 2 days later, Isaiah walked into the county attorney's office and filed a formal complaint. He described what he'd seen when he'd seen it where. He gave the exact time, 11:47 p.m., August 23rd, because he'd looked at his dashboard clock right after trying to ground himself in something concrete and real. He signed his name. The county attorney, a thin man named Phillips who'd held the position for 12 years, took the complaint with a concerned expression and promised Isaiah they would investigate thoroughly. "This is serious, Mr. Tucker. If what you're describing is accurate, it's a matter for law enforcement oversight. We'll handle this appropriately." Isaiah left feeling like maybe, just maybe, the system still worked. Like reporting a crime committed by a law enforcement officer would actually result in accountability. He had no idea that within 2 hours his complaint would be sitting on Sheriff Wade Cutler's desk, delivered by the county attorney who reported directly to the mayor, who happened to be Wade Cutler's older brother. Isaiah Tucker had just signed his own death warrant. He just didn't know it yet. Coopersville, Georgia, wasn't a big town. It had never been big. Population 3,200 when the textile mill was running down to 2,800, now that it had closed. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where family names mattered, where power got passed down through generations like heirloom china. The Cutler family had been powerful for as long as anyone could remember. Wade Cutler was the sheriff, 52 years old, 27 years in law enforcement, the last 12 as the elected sheriff. Before that, 15 years as a deputy. He knew every back road, every hiding spot, every dirty secret in Coopersville and the surrounding county. His older brother, Raymond Cutler, was the mayor. 55 in office for 16 years, owner of Cutler Real Estate, the largest property management company in 3 counties. Between the two of them, they owned 800 acres outright and controlled another 2,000 through various business arrangements. Wade's wife, Linda Cutler, was the county prosecutor. She decided which cases went forward and which ones quietly disappeared. It was a cozy arrangement. Judge Patricia Brennan wasn't family by blood, but she might as well have been. Appointed 8 years ago with the Cutlers' enthusiastic backing, her rulings consistently favored Cutler family interests. The 8-person sheriff's department was staffed entirely by men loyal to Wade Cutler. Some because they benefited from the system. Some because they were afraid of what would happen if they weren't loyal. And some, like Deputy Frank Hollis, because they genuinely enjoyed the power that came with the badge. Over the past 5 years, 14 families had been forced out of Coopersville through civil forfeiture. The process was always the same. A traffic stop, a search, a claim of drug activity, or illegal cash. Property seized under civil asset forfeiture laws that allowed law enforcement to take property suspected of being connected to a crime without ever charging the owner with anything. The property itself was guilty, the legal theory went, and it was up to the owner to prove otherwise, which required lawyers, which required money, which most of these families didn't have. The properties always ended up sold at auction, and Cutler Real Estate always ended up buying them, usually for a fraction of their actual value. It was a beautiful system, legal, profitable. and it kept undesirable elements by which Wade Cutler meant Black and Latino families from putting down permanent roots in what he considered his town. Isaiah Tucker didn't know all of this. Not yet. He just knew that the day after he filed his complaint, Sheriff Wade Cutler pulled him over in his own driveway. Isaiah had been unloading groceries from his truck bags of food for the week basics from the Piggly Wiggly in town. He heard the patrol car before he saw it, that particular growl of a police interceptor engine, and turned to see Cutler pulling up the long gravel drive that led to Isaiah's farmhouse. His stomach dropped. Cutler parked sideways across the driveway, blocking Isaiah's truck in. He took his time getting out, adjusting his gun belt, settling his mirrored sunglasses even though the sun was already low on the horizon. Isaiah Cutler said not quite a greeting, more like he was testing how the name tasted in his mouth. "Sheriff, what can I do for you?" "Got a report of suspicious activity on this property. Thought I'd come check it out myself." Isaiah's mind raced. Suspicious activity on his own property. He'd been home all day working on fence repairs in the back 40. I haven't seen anything suspicious. "Sheriff, but if you want to look around, you're welcome to. Actually, I'd like to search your vehicle." Isaiah's hands tightened on the grocery bag he was holding. "My vehicle. What for suspicious activity report? I need to verify there's nothing illegal in there." "Sheriff, with respect, unless you have a warrant or probable cause, I'm going to have to decline that search." The words came out steadier than Isaiah felt. He'd practiced them in his head 1,000 times, taught them to his son before he left for the military, drilled them into his daughter before she moved to Atlanta. Know your rights. Be polite. Be firm. Don't give them an excuse. Cutler's jaw tightened. "You sure you want to do this the hard way, Isaiah?" "I'm not doing anything the hard way, Sheriff. I'm just exercising my Fourth Amendment rights." Fourth Amendment. Cutler stepped closer, close enough that Isaiah could smell coffee and tobacco on his breath. "You know what I think? I think you've been getting some bad advice, talking to the wrong people, getting ideas above your station." His hand rested casually on his service weapon. Not threatening exactly, just there, a reminder. This town has ways of dealing with troublemakers, Isaiah. Ways of making life real difficult for people who don't know when to mind their business. He leaned in. "You understand what I'm saying?" Isaiah understood perfectly. This wasn't about a search. This was about the complaint. This was Cutler letting him know that he knew and that there would be consequences. "I understand, Sheriff." "Good." Cutler straightened, pulled out his ticket book. "I'm citing you for failure to maintain your vehicle. That left taillight is cracked. Get it fixed, or next time it's a court appearance." Isaiah glanced at his truck. The taillight was fine. Had been checked just last month during his inspection, but arguing would only make things worse. "Yes, sir." Cutler handed him the ticket, got back in his patrol car, and sat there for a long minute just looking at Isaiah before he finally backed out and drove away. Isaiah stood in his driveway holding a bag of groceries in one hand and a meaningless citation in the other, and realized that this was just the beginning. From the porch next door, Evelyn Marsh watched through her screen door, her phone in her hand, still recording. Evelyn Marsh was 73 years old, and she'd lived next to the Tucker family for 47 years. She'd moved here in 1977 with her husband Frank, both of them young and full of plans for their little farm, their little piece of the American dream. Frank had hit it off immediately with Isaiah's father, James Tucker, and the two families had become close in the way that neighbors do when they rely on each other. Borrowing equipment, helping with harvests, sitting on porches on summer evenings, and talking about nothing important. In 1965, before Evelyn and Frank had even moved to Coopersville, the clan had burned a cross in the Tuckers' front yard. James Tucker had been one of the first black men in the county to register to vote after the Voting Rights Act passed. That didn't sit well with certain elements of the community. But Frank Marsh, who'd only known the Tuckers for 3 weeks at that point, had driven over with his shotgun and stood on their porch until dawn, daring the hooded men to come back. "My neighbor is a better man than any of you will ever be," Frank had told them, his voice carrying across the yard. "And I'd rather die defending him than live as a coward who stayed silent." They'd left. The Tuckers and the Marshes had been family ever since. Frank had died in 2019. Heart attack. Sudden the way these things happen. Isaiah had been a pallbearer, had stood in the rain at the graveside and held Evelyn while she cried because that's what family did. So when Evelyn saw Sheriff Cutler pull into Isaiah's driveway that day, something in her gut told her to pay attention. And when Cutler got aggressive, when he made those thinly veiled threats, when he wrote that citation for a taillight that wasn't broken, Evelyn Marsh made a decision. She pulled out her phone and started recording. She was 73 years old, white widowed arthritic, living on Social Security and Frank's pension. She had high blood pressure, one functioning kidney, and osteoporosis that made her bones brittle as bird wings, and she was done being silent. Frank wasn't here to stand on Isaiah's porch anymore, so she would. Over the next 3 weeks, Evelyn recorded everything. Every time a patrol car drove past Isaiah's farm a little too slowly. Every time deputies pulled him over for phantom violations. Every act of harassment, every threat, every abuse of power. Her phone was always charged, always ready. She sat on her porch in her rocking chair, knitting and watching, making sure Isaiah knew that someone was bearing witness. Because that's what you did when you saw wrong. You bore witness. Otherwise, it was like it never happened at all. The harassment started small and escalated fast. The day after Cutler's driveway visit, Isaiah's main buyer called. "Isaiah, I'm real sorry about this," Jim Davidson from the grocery co-op said, his voice strained. "But we're going to have to cancel our contract, effective immediately." Isaiah had been supplying the co-op with organic vegetables for 8 years. It was his primary income source, the thing that kept the farm viable. "Jim, what are you talking about? Did I do something wrong? Is there a quality issue?" "No, nothing like that. Your produce is great, always has been. It's just, we got a call from the mayor's office yesterday. They suggested we might want to source from other suppliers. Said there might be insurance complications if we continued working with you." "Insurance complications?" "Yeah. Look, Isaiah, I don't know what's going on, but I got a business to run. I can't afford to get on the wrong side of the city. I'm sorry." The line went dead. Isaiah sat in his kitchen, staring at his phone, doing math in his head. Without the co-op contract, he'd lost 60% of his income. He had savings, but not much. A few $1,000s at most. Enough to get through maybe 3 months if he was careful. 3 months to find new buyers in a county where everyone knew the Cutlers controlled the market. The next day, the bank called. "Mr. Tucker, this is Sandra Williams from First Coopersville Bank. I'm calling about your farm loan." Isaiah had taken out a loan 3 years ago to upgrade his irrigation system. Small loan, $20,000, manageable payments. "Never missed one. What about it?" "Well, our loan review committee has flagged your account for irregularities. We're going to need to do a full audit of your finances." Irregularities. What kind of irregularities? I'm not at liberty to discuss the details over the phone, but you should be aware that if the audit finds any discrepancies, we may need to call the loan. Call the loan? You mean demand full repayment? That's correct. I'm current on all my payments. There are no discrepancies. That's what the audit will determine. You'll be hearing from us within 30 days. She hung up. Isaiah sat at his kitchen table, the same table where Clara had sat for 30 years, where they'd raised their kids, where they'd made plans and dreamed dreams and built a life. And he understood. They were coming at him from every angle, cutting off his income, threatening his loan, isolating him economically. This was how they destroyed people, not with violence, though Isaiah suspected violence would come if the economic pressure didn't work, but with paperwork. With phone calls from apologetic bureaucrats who were just following orders, with a system designed to grind people down until they gave up and went away. The county inspector arrived the following week. Brad Morrison, clipboard in hand, official vest with county inspector printed on the back. He spent 3 hours walking around Isaiah's property, taking notes, shaking his head. "Mr. Tucker, I'm afraid we've got some serious violations here." Isaiah had followed him around the entire time, watching him mark things that weren't problems. "What violations? Let's see." Morrison flipped through his pages. Unsafe fencing on the north property line, inadequate septic drainage, unpermitted structure, that equipment shed by the barn, improper storage of agricultural chemicals, multiple fire code violations in the barn, environmental hazards from improper fuel storage. I'm counting 14 distinct violations. Brad, you inspected this property 2 years ago. You gave me a clean bill. Things change, Mr. Tucker. Equipment degrades. Standards evolve. The fencing is the same. The septic is the same. That equipment shed has been there since 1985. Nothing has changed except the inspector. Morrison's face flushed. "You'll receive official notice in the mail. You'll have 30 days to remediate these violations. If you fail to comply, the county will be forced to assess fines of $50,000 and potentially condemn the property as unsafe." $50,000. For violations that didn't exist. Isaiah watched Morrison drive away, and something inside him shifted. Not broke exactly, just rearranged. He'd spent his whole life trying to do things right. Pay his taxes. Follow the rules. Be a good citizen. Trust the system. And the system was rigging the game against him because he dared to tell the truth about a corrupt sheriff. That night, his daughter called from Atlanta. "Daddy, I heard about the inspection. About the co-op contract. What's going on?" Isaiah wanted to lie, wanted to tell her everything was fine, that he had it under control, that she shouldn't worry. But Clara had always said honesty was the foundation of family, even when honesty hurt. "They're coming after me, baby. After the farm. They want me gone. Then come here. Come to Atlanta. Live with us. Marcus and I have plenty of room. The kids would love having their granddad around. You can sell the farm, take the money, start over. Nia, I know it's hard. I know it's Grandpa's land. But Daddy, it's not worth dying over. If I sell, they win. And the next black farmer who sees something he shouldn't, the next person who tries to speak up, they'll know there's no point. That power always wins. That corruption always survives. But you don't have to be the one to fight this battle." "Yes," Isaiah said quietly. "I do. Because if not me, then who? If not now?" Then went silence on the line. "You sound like Mama. Your mama was the smartest person I ever knew. She'd also tell you not to get yourself killed proving a point." "No," Isaiah said. "She'd tell me that some things are worth more than safety, worth more than comfort. Your mama knew that. That's why I loved her." After they hung up, Isaiah sat in the dark for a long time, thinking about choices and consequences, about the farm his grandfather had bought with money saved from sharecropping, about the land that held 3 generations of Tucker sweat and dreams. He thought about Clara buried in the family plot under the oak tree her father had planted. And he made a choice. He wasn't leaving. What Isaiah didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that his entire ordeal was being documented by someone who wasn't Evelyn Marsh. Sarah Mitchell had been in Coopersville for 4 months. She'd rented the apartment above the diner on Main Street, paid cash for 6 months up front, kept to herself. Told everyone she was a freelance journalist working on a book about rural land loss and racial wealth gaps. Academic stuff. Boring. The kind of thing tenure-track professors wrote that no one actually read. She'd interviewed a lot of people. The displaced families, the local historians, the county clerk. Even Isaiah Tucker twice before his barn burned. She asked questions about property values, zoning laws, tax assessments. Yawn-inducing stuff. She took notes in a leather journal, recorded interviews on an old cassette recorder that looked like it was from 1987. People forgot she was there. That was the point. Because while everyone saw a nerdy academic writing a book no one would read, they didn't notice that the cassette recorder was actually military-grade surveillance equipment, or that the leather journal contained encrypted case notes, or that the old car she drove had a federal motor pool registration hidden under a fake VIN, Dr. Sarah Mitchell. Visiting scholar from Duke University was actually Special Agent Sarah Reeves' UC Berkeley undergrad FBI Academy Quantico. 12 years with the Bureau specializing in rural corruption and civil rights violations. She wasn't writing a book. She was building a RICO case. And Isaiah Tucker, the farmer who'd been pulled over 7 times in 3 weeks, was about to become her star witness, whether he knew it or not. The traffic stops became a pattern. First week 4 times in 5 days. Tuesday morning, driving to the hardware store. Deputy Randall Foster pulled him over for crossing the center line. Isaiah had been in his lane. Foster gave him a warning and kept him on the roadside for 20 minutes, running his license, searching his vehicle records, making him late for everything. Thursday afternoon, coming back from the post office. Same deputy. Failure to signal lane change. Another warning, another 20 minutes. Friday evening, heading to church. Deputy Frank Hollis this time, the enforcer. 45 years old, built like a linebacker with dead eyes and a reputation for brutality that everyone knew about and no one talked about. Hollis didn't give a warning. He yanked Isaiah out of the truck, spun him around, slammed him face first against the vehicle hard enough to split Isaiah's lip. Hands on the hood. "Don't move. Officer, what did I said, don't move." A family of tourists drove past their minivan, slowing down to watch their children's faces pressed against the windows. Isaiah could feel their stares, their judgment, their assumption that he must have done something to deserve this. Hollis searched him roughly, hands digging into pockets, patting down hard enough to bruise. Found nothing, of course. There was nothing to find. "You got a problem with authority, Tucker." Isaiah kept his mouth shut. Knew that anything he said would be twisted, used against him. "I asked you a question." Hollis's breath was hot against Isaiah's ear, his hand pressing Isaiah's face harder against the truck hood. "No, sir. No problem." Good. Because men who have problems with authority tend to have accidents. "You understand?" "Yes, sir." Hollis released him, stepped back. "Taillight's out. Get it fixed, or next time I'm impounding the vehicle." The taillight wasn't out. Isaiah had checked it that morning, but he nodded. Said yes, sir. Waited for Hollis to drive away before he finally allowed his hands to shake. From her porch across the street, Evelyn Marsh watched through her screen door, her phone raised, recording everything. Isaiah filed a complaint with the sheriff's department. Excessive force, unlawful search, harassment. It was dismissed within 24 hours. Deputy Hollis followed proper protocol for a suspicious vehicle stop. The force used was appropriate to ensure officer safety. Complaint unfounded. That's when Isaiah understood. There was no internal accountability. The system protected itself. Complaints went nowhere because the people reviewing complaints were the same people committing the violations. He tried calling his lawyer. Tom Harrison, a guy he'd known for 15 years, had handled Clara's will and the farm paperwork. Tom, I need to talk to you about harassment I've been experiencing from the sheriff's department. Silence on the line. Tom, Isaiah. I'm real sorry, but I can't help you with that. What do you mean you can't help? You're my lawyer. Not anymore. I'm sending you an email today, terminating our relationship. It's nothing personal. I have to think about my practice. They got to you. I have to go. Click. Isaiah sat in his kitchen, staring at his phone, feeling the walls closing in. That's when his barn burned. The next day, exhausted, terrified, Isaiah forced himself to attend the town council meeting. It was held the second Tuesday of every month in the courthouse basement, and usually only a handful of people showed up. The mayor, the 5 council members, maybe a few concerned citizens with complaints about potholes or property taxes. That night the room was more crowded than usual. Word had spread about Isaiah's barn. People came to watch the black farmer try to take on the Cutler family. Some out of sympathy, most out of curiosity, a few out of malice, eager to see him put in his place. Isaiah signed up for public comment, waited his turn, and when Mayor Raymond Cutler called his name, he stood and walked to the podium on shaking legs. Mr. Tucker, you have 3 minutes. Isaiah looked at the mayor, Wade Cutler's older brother, the man who controlled economic development zoning business licenses, the man who'd probably given the order for the co-op to drop him. My name is Isaiah Tucker. I've lived in Coopersville my whole life. I'm a third-generation farmer. My grandfather bought our land in 1947, and my family has been productive, tax-paying members of this community for 77 years. He paused, gathering courage. 6 weeks ago, I witnessed Sheriff Wade Cutler engaging in criminal activity. I reported it to the county attorney. Since then, I have been harassed by law enforcement. I've been pulled over 7 times for phantom violations. My buyer contracts have been canceled under suspicious circumstances. My bank loan has been called without cause. A county inspector found 14 violations on my property that didn't exist 2 years ago. And 3 nights ago, my barn burned down in a fire that was clearly arson, but the fire marshal ruled it an accident. The room had gone completely silent. I'm here tonight to ask this council to investigate the harassment I've been experiencing. To hold law enforcement accountable for Mr. Tucker. Mayor Cutler interrupted, his voice sharp. These are serious accusations. Do you have proof? I have documentation of every traffic stop. I have video evidence of excessive force. I have video. May we see this video? Evelyn started to stand, but Isaiah caught her eye and shook his head slightly. If she revealed she had the recordings, she'd become a target too. What I'm asking for is an independent investigation by the state police or an external agency, because it's clear that internal complaints go nowhere. Mr. Tucker, this council doesn't have the authority to initiate investigations into law enforcement. That's handled by the sheriff's department internally or by the county prosecutor's office. The prosecutor is Sheriff Cutler's wife. The mayor's face darkened. Are you suggesting that Prosecutor Cutler is corrupt? Isaiah knew he was on dangerous ground. But he'd come this far. I'm suggesting that there's a conflict of interest that makes independent oversight impossible. The mayor banged his gavel. Your time is up, Mr. Tucker. The council will take your concerns under advisement. I haven't finished. This meeting is adjourned. Bang. The council members stood and filed out, not meeting Isaiah's eyes. The crowd dispersed, some people giving him sympathetic looks, others glaring at him like he'd just committed blasphemy. Isaiah stood alone at the podium, his 3 minutes of speech having accomplished exactly nothing. But then a woman approached him, late 30s, professional-looking, carrying a leather bag. Mr. Tucker, I'm Sarah Mitchell. I'm a journalist working on a book about rural land seizures. I'd love to interview you if you're willing." Isaiah studied her. She looked earnest. "Academic, harmless. What kind of book, the new sharecropping? How rural land loss perpetuates racial wealth gaps. It's academic, pretty dry stuff. But your story fits the pattern I've been documenting. I don't know if I want my story in a book." "I understand. But sometimes documentation is protection. When things are recorded, witnessed, made part of the public record, it becomes harder for people to make those things disappear. You don't have to decide now. Here's my card. Call me if you change your mind." Isaiah took the card. Sarah Mitchell, freelance journalist, a phone number and an email address. "Thank you." She smiled and walked away. Isaiah had no idea he'd just met an FBI agent who'd been documenting Coopersville's corruption for 18 months. The next week was a blur of pressure from every direction. The bank officially called his loan. Full repayment required within 90 days. $20,000 he didn't have. The county sent him a certified letter. 30 days to remediate violations or face $50,000 in fines and property condemnation. His credit cards were mysteriously declined at 2 different stores, both owned by Cutler family friends. Someone cut his fence line in 3 places, allowing his horses to get onto the road. He spent 5 hours finding them, fixing the fence, and dealing with angry calls from a neighbor whose garden the horses had trampled. Anonymous phone calls at 2 in the morning. No one spoke, just breathing, hanging up after 15 seconds. Sometimes twice a night. Isaiah stopped sleeping more than 2 or 3 hours at a stretch. He kept the shotgun by his bed now. Loaded. Safety off. Clara would have hated it. She'd never allowed guns in the house, said they brought tragedy with them. But Clara wasn't here to see what fear looked like when it had teeth and a badge. Every sound woke him. A car door slamming. A dog barking 2 farms over. The wind rattling the window that faced the road. His hands developed a tremor. Not constant, just when he was stressed, which was always. He lost 15 pounds in 3 weeks, his appetite gone, food turning to ash in his mouth. The Reverend James Porter came to visit, sat with Isaiah on the porch, tried to talk sense into him. "Brother Isaiah, I've seen this before. In the 60s. In the 80s. When powerful people want you gone, they don't stop. They escalate until you break or you die. I know, Reverend. Then why are you still here? Sell the farm. Take the money. Go be with your daughter. Live to fight another day." Because Isaiah said, his voice tired, "Clara's buried here. Under that oak tree my father-in-law planted 60 years ago. Next to her parents. Next to my parents. This land has 4 generations of Tuckers in it. If I leave, who tends their graves? Isaiah. And if I sell, Cutler wins. He takes this land, turns it into a strip mall or a housing development, erases every trace that my family was ever here. I won't do that. I can't." Porter was quiet for a long time. "You know, he finally said there's a fine line between courage and stubbornness." "I know." "Which side of that line are you on?" Isaiah looked out at his fields, at the barn that was still just charred posts, at the house his grandfather had built with his own hands. "I guess we'll find out." Porter left, and one by one the other families in Coopersville's small black community stopped visiting. Not because they didn't care, but because they were afraid. Afraid that association with Isaiah would make them targets too. Only Evelyn came by regularly, brought sweet tea and cornbread on Sundays, sat on the porch and talked about Frank, about the old days, about everything except the current nightmare. And she kept recording. Meanwhile, 90 miles away, in a nondescript federal building, Special Agent Sarah Reeves was having a tense conversation with her supervisor. "Tucker's in danger," she said, spreading photos across the conference table. "Cutler's escalating faster than we anticipated. The barn fire was attempted intimidation that could have easily turned lethal. Next time, it might be his house, or him directly. Supervisory Special Agent James Martinez studied the photos. We're 3 weeks out from having enough for RICO charges that stick. The wiretaps are producing gold. We've got Cutler discussing the Tucker problem with his brother with the prosecutor with his deputies. We're documenting a conspiracy in real time. And if Tucker dies before we finish documenting, then we still have 14 other families' worth of evidence. This case doesn't hinge on Tucker, but he's the cleanest victim. No criminal history, upstanding citizen witnessed a crime and reported it through proper channels. He's the poster boy for why this investigation matters. Martinez leaned back. So, what are you proposing? Make contact. Establish trust. Bring him into protective custody if necessary. If we reveal ourselves now, Cutler will scatter. The mayor, the prosecutor, the judge. They'll all lawyer up, destroy evidence, create distance. We'll get Cutler on relatively minor charges and lose the bigger conspiracy. And if Tucker doesn't survive the next 3 weeks, then we prosecute Cutler for his murder along with everything else. Reeves stared at her supervisor. You're willing to let him die to make a stronger case. I'm willing to weigh one life against 14 families who've already been victimized and the dozens who will be if we don't take down the entire network. We can offer Tucker protection if he asks for it. We can't force it on him. He doesn't know we exist. He doesn't know protection is even an option. Martinez was quiet for a moment. Then make contact if you think it's necessary. But do not reveal the scope of the investigation. Do not tell him about the wiretaps. Position yourself as a journalist who's stumbled onto something bigger. See if he'll trust you enough to accept help. And if Cutler finds out I've made contact, then your cover is blown and we pull you out. But we don't move on the arrests until we have everything locked down. Clear. Reeves left the meeting feeling sick. The Bureau was playing a long game, and Isaiah Tucker was a pawn they were willing to sacrifice for a stronger position. She'd joined the FBI because she believed in justice. But sometimes justice moved too slowly to save everyone it was supposed to protect. That night she drove back to Coopersville, parked her aging Honda Civic outside the apartment above the diner, and sat in the dark for a long time, trying to figure out how to save a man who didn't know he needed saving. 2 nights before the bulldozer confrontation that would change everything, Isaiah Tucker sat at his kitchen table at 2 a.m. with a pen paper and a bottle of whiskey. The whiskey had been in the cabinet since Clara's funeral. He'd bought it because people brought whiskey to funerals because it was expected, because sometimes grief needed something stronger than tears. He'd never opened it. Until tonight. He poured 2 fingers into a glass, stared at it, and started writing. Malik. He began, his handwriting shaky. If you're reading this, something has happened to me. I want you to know I love you, and I'm proud of the man you've become. The farm is yours if you want it, though I'll understand if you don't. This land has cost our family a lot. He paused, crossed out the last sentence, started over. Malik, if you're reading this, I chose to fight. I need you to understand why. Your great-grandfather bought this land in 1947 with money he saved for 10 years working as a sharecropper, saving every penny he could hide from the landowner. He paid $800 for 140 acres that white farmers wouldn't sell to him at any price until the man who owned it died and his widow needed quick cash. Isaiah's hand was shaking harder now. He worked this land until his hands bled. Built that barn board by board. Planted those oak trees you used to climb. Did all of it so you wouldn't have to start from nothing the way he did. So you could build on something instead of starting over every generation. His throat was tight. And I'll be damned if I let corrupt men take that from our family without a fight. Even if that fight costs me everything. Because some things are worth more than safety. Your mother knew that. Now you do too. He set that letter aside and started on his daughters. Naya, baby girl, you were right. I should have left. Should have sold the farm and moved to Atlanta with you and the grandkids. Should have chosen safety over principle. The words looked wrong on the page. Isaiah stared at them for a long moment. Then he picked up the whiskey bottle in one hand, stood up so fast his chair fell backward, and hurled the bottle across the kitchen. It exploded against the wall glass, and amber liquid spreading across the white paint like the barn fire spreading across the night, and Isaiah stood there, breathing hard, staring at the wreckage, and something inside him shifted. "No," he said to the empty room. To the ghosts. To Clara and his father and his grandfather. "No, I'm not writing these letters. I'm not planning my own funeral. I'm not giving them permission to erase me." He tore up both letters, threw the pieces in the trash, walked outside into the cold September night, 3 in the morning, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. He looked at the land. His land. His grandfather's land. His children's birthright. "They're going to have to kill me," he said to the darkness, "because I'm not leaving." The darkness didn't answer, but Isaiah felt something change inside himself. Not hope, exactly. Something harder than hope. Resolve. The kind of resolve that comes when you stop fearing the worst thing that can happen and start preparing to meet it head on. He pulled out his phone, looked at the card Sarah Mitchell had given him. 3:17 a.m., too early to call, but he sent a text anyway. "This is Isaiah Tucker. I'd like to do that interview. When can we meet?" The response came back in less than a minute. "Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Your place. I'll bring coffee." Isaiah went back inside. Didn't sleep. Just waited for dawn. Waited for whatever came next. Ready. The next morning, Sheriff Wade Cutler received his foreclosure notice. The bank sale was scheduled for Saturday, 10 days away. Everything Isaiah Tucker owned would be auctioned off to the highest bidder. Cutler smiled when he read the notice. He owned the bank president, had gotten him appointed through his brother's influence. The fix was in. In 10 days, Isaiah Tucker would be gone and Cutler Real Estate would buy the property for pennies on the dollar. Problem solved. Except Isaiah Tucker wasn't planning to leave quietly. And 73-year-old Evelyn Marsh, watching from her porch as the process server delivered that foreclosure notice, wasn't planning to let it happen without a fight either. She made a phone call. Not to the sheriff, not to the mayor, not to any local authority who could be intimidated or bought. She called Sarah Mitchell, the journalist who'd been asking questions around town. "Ms. Mitchell, this is Evelyn Marsh. I'm Isaiah Tucker's neighbor. I have videos you need to see, videos of everything they've done to him. And I think you should come over here right now because I think they're going to try to take his land tomorrow, and I think Isaiah's going to do something that's going to get him killed." Sarah Reeves, A.K. Sarah Mitchell was in her car within 5 minutes. The FBI's investigation was about to collide with real-time events in a way that would force her to make a choice. Protect her case or protect a man who'd done nothing wrong except tell the truth. Saturday afternoon arrived with the kind of perfect weather that felt like mockery. Clear blue sky temperature in the mid-70s, light breeze rustling through the oak trees. The kind of day that should have been spent working in the fields or sitting on the porch with sweet tea, not waiting for the world to end. Isaiah sat on his porch, shotgun across his lap. Not aimed at anyone, not threatening, just there, a statement, a line in the sand. From her porch next door, Evelyn saw him sitting there and felt her heart break a little. She'd known Isaiah since he was 11 years old, had watched him grow up, get married, raise children, bury his wife. She'd never seen him look the way he looked now. Exhausted, resolved, like a man who'd made peace with whatever came next. She'd already sent the videos to Sarah Mitchell. All of them. Every traffic stop, every harassment, every threat. Time-stamped, dated, narrated. Now all she could do was watch and bear witness. At 2:47 p.m., the convoy arrived. 2 sheriff's department vehicles, a county truck, and on a flatbed trailer, a bulldozer. Sheriff Wade Cutler was in the lead vehicle. Deputy Frank Hollis was in the second. 2 other deputies Isaiah didn't recognize made up the rest of the crew. The bulldozer operator was Tommy Reeves, who'd gone to high school with Isaiah's son, who'd been to barbecues at the Tucker farm, who knew exactly whose property he was about to destroy. Isaiah watched them park, watched Cutler and Hollis get out, watched them walk toward him with that particular swagger that cops get when they know they have the law on their side, even when what they're doing is fundamentally wrong. Isaiah Cutler called out, stopping about 20 feet from the porch. "We're here on official county business. We have authorization to remove unsafe structures from this property as per county code violations filed by Inspector Morrison." Isaiah didn't move. "The only structure you've got authorization to remove is the equipment shed. The one that's been there since 1985. The one that's not unsafe and never has been. That's not what the county inspector says. The county inspector is a liar." Cutler's face hardened. "That's a serious accusation. It's a true accusation. Everything about this is false. The violations, the foreclosure, the harassment, all of it designed to run me off my land because I witnessed you committing a crime and I was stupid enough to report it. Mr. Tucker, I'm going to give you one chance to stand down and let us do our job. If you interfere, I'll have no choice but to arrest you for obstruction. You're going to arrest me for sitting on my own porch if you interfere with official county business. Yes." Isaiah looked at the bulldozer, at the deputies, at Cutler's hand resting casually on his service weapon. This was the moment where he either backed down or stood his ground. The moment that would define whether his grandfather's sacrifice, his father's work, his own life meant anything at all. He stood up, slow, deliberate, the shotgun hanging loose in his right hand, pointed at the ground. "That equipment shed," Isaiah said, his voice carrying across the yard, "is not unsafe. It's not a violation, and you're not touching it." He walked down the porch steps, started walking toward the bulldozer. "Tucker, stop right there." Isaiah kept walking. Hollis pulled his weapon. "Drop the gun. It's not aimed at anyone. It's not a threat. It's my property, and I have every legal right to carry it on my own land. Drop it now." Isaiah reached the bulldozer, stood directly in front of it, set the shotgun on the ground, then raised his hands above his head. "I am unarmed. I am not threatening anyone, but I'm not moving. If you want to destroy my property, you're going to have to go through me." Cutler's face was scarlet. "Tucker, you are obstructing official county business. I'm placing you under arrest. For what? For standing on my own property. For obstruction. For threatening an officer with a firearm. I never aimed that weapon at anyone, and you know it. This is false arrest, and you know that too. You have 5 seconds to comply." Isaiah kept his hands up, looked directly at Cutler. "I'm not leaving, so do what you're going to do." Hollis started forward, hand on his gun, and Isaiah closed his eyes, bracing for whatever came next. That's when they heard the car. A Honda Civic, old and battered, pulling into the driveway. Sarah Mitchell behind the wheel, a camera visible on the passenger seat. She got out the camera, already recording, and called out, "Sheriff Cutler, Sarah Mitchell, freelance journalist. Can I ask you a few questions about the property disputes in this county?" Cutler spun around his face, a mask of rage. "This is private property. You need to leave. Now." "Mr. Tucker invited me. I'm documenting land seizures for a research project." She held up her camera. "I'm recording this interaction. For my book. Get that camera out of here or I'll confiscate it as evidence. Evidence of what? A man standing on his own property, across the property line. The Mexican farm worker family who'd been watching from their field started recording on their phones. Evelyn was recording from her porch. Now Sarah Mitchell was recording with a professional camera. Too many witnesses, too much documentation, too public. Cutler's hand tightened on his weapon. For a moment, Isaiah thought he might actually shoot anyway. Damn the witnesses, damn the cameras. But then Hollis touched his arm. Wade. Too many people watching. Cutler turned back to Isaiah, his voice low and venomous. This isn't over. You've got 10 days before the bank sale. 10 days. And then this land isn't yours anymore. Enjoy your last week here, Tucker, because it's all you've got left. He jerked his head at the deputies. Let's go. They got back in their vehicles. The bulldozer remained where it was. They'd come back for it later, probably with fewer witnesses. The convoy pulled away, leaving Isaiah standing alone in his driveway, hands still shaking, heart still pounding alive by the thinnest of margins. Sarah Mitchell approached slowly, camera still on. Mr. Tucker, are you all right? Isaiah lowered his hands, picked up his shotgun, started walking back to the house. Mr. Tucker, he stopped, turned. Looked at this woman who'd shown up at exactly the right moment who'd prevented Cutler from escalating to violence. Who are you really? Sarah looked at him for a long moment. Made a decision. Can we talk? Inside without the camera. They sat at Isaiah's kitchen table. The same table where he'd almost written his goodbye letters, where he'd shared meals with Clara for 30 years, where he'd raised his children and planned his crops and lived his life. Sarah Mitchell set her camera aside, pulled out her phone, typed something, then turned the screen to face Isaiah. FBI Special Agent Sarah Reeves, Organized Crime and Civil Rights Division. Isaiah stared at the badge displayed on the screen, looked at her face, back at the badge. How long his voice was hoarse. 18 months. We've been investigating Sheriff Cutler, his brother, the entire network. Drug trafficking, civil rights violations, racketeering. The works. 18 months. Isaiah's hands were shaking again. My barn burned. They've threatened my life. They're taking my land. And you've been watching for 18 months, I know. I'm sorry. We needed time to build the case, to document the conspiracy, to get wiretaps, financial records, witness testimony. If we'd moved earlier, we'd have gotten Cutler on minor charges and missed the bigger network. So you used me as bait. Reeves didn't flinch. Yes. Though you didn't know it. You became a target when you witnessed that drug meeting. Everything that's happened since the harassment, the foreclosure, the intimidation, that's all evidence of witness tampering, obstruction of justice, deprivation of rights under color of law, evidence that required me to suffer. Yes, Isaiah wanted to be angry, wanted to rage at her for letting him twist in the wind while she built her case. But he was too tired, too wrung out. Why are you telling me now? Because in 3 days we arrest everyone. Sheriff Cutler, his brother, the prosecutor, the judge, 8 deputies. 12 people, simultaneous federal arrests. And we need you to testify before the grand jury. And if I say no, then you lose your farm in 10 days and they'll keep escalating until you're dead or gone. And the next person who sees something wrong will learn that speaking up means destruction. Isaiah closed his eyes. And if I say yes, we arrest them Tuesday. You testify Wednesday. By Friday, they're all in federal custody, and you keep your land. The bank foreclosure was fraudulent. We have evidence of that. The county violations were fabricated. We have the inspector's communications with the mayor. All of it gets thrown out. Protective custody, if you want it. We can relocate you during the trial, provide security whatever you need. Isaiah thought about his grandfather, about Clara, about the land that held 4 generations of Tucker dreams and sweat. I'm not leaving this property. Mister Tucker, I didn't stand in front of that bulldozer to leave now. I'll testify. I'll do whatever you need. But I'm staying on this land. If Cutler wants to come after me, let him. At least everyone will know the truth. Reeves studied him. You're a brave man. No, Isaiah said. I'm just tired of being afraid. There's a difference. That night, Reeves made her report to her supervisor. The decision was made they would accelerate the timeline. Tuesday morning, the raids would happen. Reeves didn't sleep that night. She kept thinking about Isaiah Tucker sitting on his porch with a shotgun preparing to die for a principle that most people had long since abandoned. She'd joined the FBI because she believed in justice. But sometimes justice required sacrifice, and sometimes the people making that sacrifice didn't get to choose. She just hoped Isaiah Tucker would survive long enough to see the justice he'd earned. Tuesday morning, 6:04 a.m. Sheriff Wade Cutler was drinking coffee in his kitchen, reading the local paper, thinking about how in 8 days, Isaiah Tucker's land would belong to him. The doorbell rang. Cutler glanced at the kitchen clock. 6 in the morning. Who the hell rang doorbells at 6 in the morning? He walked to the front door coffee mug still in hand and looked through the window. His stomach dropped. 8 black SUVs. Maybe more. Blocking his driveway, the street, every possible exit. Men in FBI windbreakers more than he could count arranged in perfect tactical formation. His first thought. This is about the Tucker thing. His second, how much do they know? His third. As he opened the door and saw the lead agent holding up a warrant. Everything. They know everything. Wade Cutler. You're under arrest for conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, racketeering deprivation of rights under color of law, wire fraud, money laundering, obstruction of justice, and witness intimidation. The agent kept reading the list going on and on. Behind him, Cutler's wife Linda started screaming. His daughter Jessica, home from college for the weekend, was crying. His son Wade Jr., 17, was filming it all on his phone, until an agent politely asked him to put it away. Cutler was handcuffed in his bathrobe, walked past neighbors he'd known his whole life, past news cameras that had somehow already arrived past a growing crowd of people who'd once feared him, and now watched his downfall with a mixture of shock and satisfaction. At that exact moment, Deputy Frank Hollis was at the gym in the middle of a deadlift when FBI agents swarmed in. He tried to run, got 3 feet before he was tackled and cuffed, 315 pounds still on the barbell. Mayor Raymond Cutler was arrested in his office mid-phone call, telling a developer about properties that would soon be available. Prosecutor Linda Cutler was arrested in her car in the courthouse parking lot, coffee spilling everywhere, her reputation as a tough prosecutor dissolving in an instant. Judge Patricia Brennan was arrested in her chambers, black robe, and all her hands shaking as they cuffed her. 4 other deputies were arrested at their homes in front of their families, their lives upending in the space between one breath and the next. By 7 a.m., 12 people were in federal custody. By 8 a.m., the news had spread through Coopersville like wildfire. By 9 a.m., Isaiah Tucker's phone was ringing off the hook. He didn't answer. Just sat on his porch watching the sun rise over his land, feeling something he hadn't felt in 6 weeks. Hope. The federal courthouse was 3 hours away in the state capitol. 3 weeks after the arrests, Isaiah Tucker took the stand. He wore the same navy suit he'd worn to Clara's funeral. It was slightly tight across the shoulders. He'd gained back some of the weight he'd lost during the harassment, but it was the nicest thing he owned. His daughter Naya sat in the gallery having driven up from Atlanta. His son Malik was watching via video feed from his army base in Germany. Evelyn Marsh sat in the front row, her hands folded in her lap, her face calm. The prosecutor was a black woman from the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. Margaret Williams, 45, with a reputation for taking on impossible cases and winning them. Mr. Tucker, please state your full name for the record. Isaiah James Tucker. And where do you live, Mr. Tucker? 1847, County Road 14, Coopersville, Georgia. Same place I've lived for 58 years. Thank you. Mr. Tucker, I'd like to take you back to the night of August 23rd. Can you tell the jury what you witnessed? Isaiah looked at the jury. 12 faces, some sympathetic, some skeptical, all waiting. He looked at Wade Cutler sitting at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit. No longer the intimidating sheriff with the badge and gun. Just a middle-aged man facing the consequences of his choices. I was driving home from a church council meeting. It was late, maybe quarter to midnight. I took County Road 47 the back way like I always do. His voice was steady. He'd practiced this. Reeves had helped him prepare, told him what to expect, how to handle cross-examination. As I was making the turn onto the main road, my headlights swept across the old Bradley textile mill. I saw Sheriff Cutler's patrol car parked there. I saw Sheriff Cutler standing with Marcus Washington, who's known in our community as a drug dealer. What were they doing? I saw Marcus hand a duffel bag to Sheriff Cutler. I saw the sheriff open his trunk and start transferring packages from the bag into the trunk. I saw money exchange hands. How long did you observe this? Maybe 3 seconds. Long enough to see what was happening. Long enough for Sheriff Cutler to see me. What did you do next? I drove home. I told my wife she passed away 3 years ago, but that night she was still with me. I told her what I'd seen. She said I should report it. That staying silent made me complicit. And did you report it? Yes, ma'am. 2 days later, I filed a formal complaint with the county attorney's office. What happened after you filed that complaint? Isaiah took a breath. This was the hard part. The part where he had to relive every moment of terror, every humiliation, every threat. Sheriff Cutler pulled me over in my own driveway the next day, demanded to search my truck without a warrant. When I refused, he threatened me. Said this town had ways of dealing with troublemakers. He went through it all. The traffic stops, the economic pressure, the barn fire, the false violations, the foreclosure, the threats. The defense attorney, a slick-looking man from Atlanta named Davidson, tried to interrupt several times. The judge shut him down. When Isaiah finished, the courtroom was silent. Mr. Tucker, the prosecutor, said gently, "Why didn't you just sell the farm and move away?" "Because, ma'am, my grandfather bought that land in 1947, built it from nothing, raised a family there. My father worked that land his whole life. I worked it my whole life. My wife is buried there. If I left, if I let them take it through intimidation and lies, then everything my family built would be erased, and the next person who saw something wrong would know that speaking up means losing everything." No further questions. The defense attorney stood for cross-examination. "Mr. Tucker, isn't it true that you were experiencing significant financial difficulties at the time you made these accusations against Sheriff Cutler?" "Yes, sir." "And isn't it true that those financial difficulties might have given you motive to fabricate a story that could lead to a lawsuit and a potential settlement?" Isaiah looked at the attorney, looked at Cutler, looked at the jury. "Sir, my financial difficulties started after I filed that complaint. Not before. My buyer canceled because the mayor's office pressured them. My bank called my loan because they were told to. The county inspector found violations that didn't exist. Everything that happened to me was retaliation for telling the truth." The attorney paused, realizing his mistake. "But you can't prove that these actions were coordinated." "Actually, Prosecutor Williams stood we can. We have wiretaps of Sheriff Cutler discussing the Tucker problem with his brother. We have text messages between the mayor and the bank president. We have emails between the county inspector and the mayor's office detailing how to fabricate violations. We have financial records showing how 14 other families were targeted the same way over 5 years. This isn't speculation, Your Honor. It's documented conspiracy. The defense attorney sat down. No further questions. But the prosecution wasn't done. Your Honor, the United States calls Raymond Cutler. The courtroom erupted. Wade Cutler's face went white. The defense objected. The judge overruled. Raymond Cutler, who'd taken a plea deal 3 days earlier, walked to the stand in civilian clothes. No mayoral bearing. No confidence. Just a man who looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. Mr. Cutler, you were the mayor of Coopersville, correct? Yes. I resigned 4 weeks ago. And you're testifying today as part of a plea agreement, is that correct? Yes. What did you plead guilty to? Conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. In exchange for your testimony, the government agreed not to pursue RICO charges, correct? Correct. Mr. Cutler, I'm going to ask you directly. Did you and your brother conspire to drive Isaiah Tucker off his land? Raymond looked at his brother. Wade stared back, jaw tight, eyes burning with betrayal. Yes. How? The day after Isaiah filed his complaint about Wade, my brother called me, said we had a problem, said Tucker needed to be handled. What did you understand handled to mean? I understood it meant Isaiah Tucker needed to leave Coopersville voluntarily, or we'd make it so difficult for him to stay that he'd have no choice. And if he didn't leave, Raymond's voice dropped, then worse. My brother said if Isaiah wouldn't sell, we'd have to make an example of him. Said we couldn't have people thinking they could report on us without consequences. Did you understand? Make an example to include physical harm? Yes. The jury leaned forward. Mr. Cutler, can you describe the scheme you and your brother used to seize properties? For the next hour, Raymond laid it all out. The fake drug stops, the civil forfeiture claims, the properties sold through Cutler Real Estate at below-market prices, the money laundered through shell companies, 14 families over 5 years, $2.1 million in illegal proceeds. He described meeting with Sheriff Cutler to discuss the Tucker situation, described authorizing the bank to call Isaiah's loan, described telling the county inspector which violations to find. Why, the prosecutor asked, "Why did you do this?" Raymond looked at the gallery, at the families who'd lost their land, at Isaiah Tucker sitting calm and dignified in the front row. Because we could. Because we controlled everything. Law enforcement zoning the courts. Because people were afraid of us. And because we convinced ourselves that what we were doing was protecting our town from people we decided didn't belong. You mean black people? Latino people? Yes, that's what I mean. He looked at his brother again. I watched Wade smile while Isaiah Tucker's barn burned at 3 a.m. I stood next to him and watched a 90-year-old structure that represented a family's entire history collapse into flames, and my brother smiled. That's when I realized what we'd become, what I'd helped create. His voice broke. Mr. Tucker, I can't undo what we did. I can't give you back those weeks of fear, but I can tell the truth. And I can make sure everyone knows that what happened to you wasn't one bad officer. It was all of us. And I was part of it. The defense had no questions. What could they ask? His own brother had just confessed. The trial lasted 3 more days. Evidence piled up like snow in a blizzard. Wiretaps, financial records, text messages, emails, testimonies from the 14 displaced families, testimony from Evelyn Marsh, video from her phone showing every traffic stop, every threat. Agent Reeves testified about the FBI's investigation, described how they'd documented every aspect of the conspiracy, how they'd waited because they wanted to take down the entire network, not just the sheriff. The jury deliberated for 7 days. Isaiah spent those 7 days at Evelyn's house, unable to bear sitting in his own home, wondering if justice would actually come or if power would protect itself one more time. Day 4, the foreman sent a note. They were stuck 10-2. 2 holdouts. Isaiah barely slept. Started writing another letter to his children just in case. Day 5. Still deliberating. Day 6. Still stuck. Day 7, 4 p.m. Isaiah was sitting on Evelyn's porch staring at nothing when his phone rang. Agent Reeves. We have a verdict. Get to the courthouse. The drive was a blur. Naya met him there, grabbed his hand. Malik was on video feed again, watching from half a world away. The courtroom was packed. Every seat filled. People standing in the back. The jury filed in, not looking at the defense table. That was a good sign, Reeves had told him. When juries convict, they can't look at the defendant. The judge entered. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreman stood. An older black woman, maybe 60, a retired teacher. She'd watched every minute of testimony with the focus of someone who'd seen this kind of injustice before and was determined to get it right. We have, Your Honor. On count 1, conspiracy to distribute controlled substances. How do you find the defendant Wade Cutler? The silence was absolute. Guilty. Wade Cutler's shoulders slumped. On count 2, racketeering. How do you find guilty? On count 3, deprivation of rights under color of law, guilty. 12 counts, 12 times the same word. Guilty, guilty, guilty. When it was over, Cutler turned in his chair and found Isaiah in the gallery. Their eyes met. Isaiah didn't smile, didn't nod, didn't show any emotion. He just held the man's gaze until a U.S. marshal took Cutler by the arm and led him away in handcuffs. The same way Cutler had led Isaiah away 6 months ago. The same way Cutler had led away 14 families before him. Only this time the handcuffs weren't coming off. 25 years. Federal prison, no parole. Deputy Frank Hollis got 18 years. Judge Brennan got 15, was disbarred. 4 other deputies got sentences ranging from 8 to 12 years. Prosecutor Linda Cutler, who'd cooperated early and provided evidence, got 5 years. Raymond Cutler, who'd testified against his brother, walked free under the terms of his plea deal. But he'd never hold public office again, never practice real estate in Georgia again. He'd lost everything, except his freedom. The 14 displaced families filed a civil lawsuit. It settled 8 months later for $1.4 million. The city agreed to new oversight mechanisms, mandatory body cameras for all law enforcement, a civilian review board with subpoena power. Isaiah Tucker's foreclosure was vacated. The bank settled a wrongful foreclosure lawsuit for $200,000 and forgave his loan. The county dropped all fabricated violations. Insurance paid for the barn fire. His contracts were restored. His land was his again. 1 year later, same farm, different world. Isaiah stood in the spot where he'd faced down the bulldozer 12 months earlier, where he'd put his life on the line for a principle most people thought was outdated and naive. Behind him, the barn his grandfather had built rose again. Bigger than before. Steel frame instead of wood, modern and fireproof, built with the insurance money and some of the settlement. His daughter Nia had moved back from Atlanta with her family. They'd bought the neighboring 40 acres with their portion of the settlement money. It had come up for sale when one of the Cutler's shell companies was liquidated, and Nia had paid full price, no discount, because she wanted to do it right. Isaiah's grandchildren, 7 and 9, were playing in the field where his grandfather had planted his first crop 77 years ago. Their laughter carried on the wind, and it was the most beautiful sound Isaiah had ever heard. Every Sunday